But think of it this way. You deposit your money in the bank, and the bank then takes that money and it lends some of that money out. So if you were the only deposit in the bank, you would say, well, wait a minute, it's lent the money out. What if I want to withdraw all my money? It's not there anymore, which is true. It's not. A fraction of that money is now being lent out, and the bank can't access it easily. So actually, if you read the fine print of your checking account, it actually says that the bank is not obliged to provide you with all the money in your checking account whenever you actually want it. They can actually freeze you out of that account for a certain amount of time until they can get that money from the person they lent it to and return it to you. And, you know, if you read the fine print in the contract, no bank is contractually obligated to provide you with all the money you want whenever you want it.
There are three ways to make a living in this business. Be first, be smarter, or cheat.
Now, why isn't this a continuous problem where I want to withdraw money and it's not there? Here you get to a statistical phenomenon, which is called the law of large numbers, and that is that if enough people are depositing money in the bank, and if the bank is not lending all of it out, but lending a certain fraction of it out, then you can come up with a number when 99.999% of all the times where people want to withdraw money, they will actually get their money. The bank will always have enough money in their vault in order to provide it to you. And the bank can then take whatever fraction they have calculated and lend it out and feel pretty comfortable, because some people are withdrawing money, but then other people are depositing money. And almost never is the case that the bank has no money to give out.
So the exchange has been made, and now $10 billion sits in a commercial bank account. Here's where it gets really interesting. For as based on the fractional reserve practice, that $10 billion deposit instantly becomes part of the bank's reserves, just as all deposits do. And regarding reserve requirements, as stated in modern money mechanics, a bank must maintain legally required reserves equal to a prescribed percentage of its deposits. It then quantifies this by stating, under current regulations, the reserve requirement against most transaction accounts is 10%. This means that with a $10 billion deposit, 10% or $1 billion is held as the required reserve, while the other $9 billion is considered an excessive reserve and can be used as the basis for new loans. Now, it is logical to assume that this $9 billion is literally coming out of the existing $10 billion deposit. However, this is actually not the case. What really happens is that the $9 billion is simply created out of thin air on top of the existing $10 billion deposit. This is how the money supply is expanded. As stated in modern money mechanics, of course they, the banks, do not really pay out loans from the money they receive as deposits. If they did this, no additional money would be created. What they do when they make loans is to accept promissory notes, loan contracts, in exchange for credits, money, to the borrower's transaction accounts. In other words, the $9 billion can be created out of nothing simply because there is a demand for such a loan and that there is a $10 billion deposit to satisfy the reserve requirements.
In addition, in more modern, sophisticated, complex financial markets, the bank, if it is in a liquidity situation where people are withdrawing money and they don't have enough money to provide, they can go out and borrow money on a short-term basis to provide the withdrawals. That's called fractional reserve banking. It's the idea that of every dollar you deposit, a certain percentage of that is lent out.
Now, let's assume that somebody walks into this bank and borrows the newly available $9 billion. They will then most likely take that money and deposit it into their own bank account. The process then repeats, for that deposit becomes part of the bank's reserves. 10% is isolated, and in turn 90% of the $9 billion, or $8.1 billion, is now available as newly created money for more loans. And, of course, that 8.1 can be loaned out and redeposited, creating an additional 7.2 billion, to 6.5 billion, to 5.9 billion, etc. This deposit money creation loan cycle can technically go on to infinity. The average mathematical result is that about $90 billion can be created on top of the original $10 billion. In other words, for every deposit that ever occurs in the banking system, about 9 times that amount can be created out of thin air.
Name of the game? Move the money from your client's pocket